Hey y'all, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be looking at a chess game that I played in my most recent tournament, which was yesterday. And yeah, so what ended up happening in this game is that it was a very interesting opening where my opponent just decided not to resign. So we're going to see how that happened. My opponent is 1560, which I know is a lot less than my rating, but bear with me. He was like paired up into my section for some reason because we were odd number of players. But we're just going to give him the benefit of the doubt and play like this is a normal game. My opponent starts off the game with e4 and I go with c6. My opponent decides to go with d4 and I play the move d5, which is the Caro-Kann defense. One of like the top like 5 openings against e4. Like there's a ton. You have e5, c5, c6, d5, e6. There's a ton of openings there. But I decided to go over the Caro-Kann because I know it very well, and my opponent decides to play the most testing line, which is the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann. But what I found is that by playing these lower rated players, normally they don't really know what to do against very normal plays. So I simply play the bishop f5, and my opponent decides to go a little bit awry immediately. He plays move h4, which is logical. And if you've never seen this trap before, this is the tall variation, which is a very interesting trap. It basically says, okay, if you play e6, white's going to win the game with g4, and the bishop is going to be able to get trapped on the corner, which is a little bit unfortunate for black. But we know what we're doing, so we're not going to fall for that. I used to play this line with h6, which is a little more passive, and yeah, it gives white a slight advantage out of the opening, but in my opinion, it's a lot of fun. Now, I've kind of started playing this very interesting line with the move h5 immediately, which is the top engine move, and it's the most played line here. But I never really realized how fun the positions would get in this line, and I'm very happy to be playing this now instead of h6. My opponent goes bishop g5, which is a move, but not a very good one. And you can already see how he's going awry on the 5th move. Like, this is already not very good. I don't have much theory here, but I know that this is a bad move, and I know that the correct move is queen b6. That's honestly the extent of my theory in this line, queen b6. But I don't know where these people are learning bishop g5, because I've seen another line with bishop g5 before. In what game was it? It was, I have a video on the channel called, like, the actual way to develop your knights or something that features this line, but I didn't know it at the moment. I played something like knight a6 there, or no, I played g6 there is what I played. But here I remember the best line because I had seen it before, and I played the move queen b6, and I already knew that black was slightly better here. My opponent decides to play the move b3, which is reasonable, simply defending the pawn. They could also just sacrifice it with a move like a bishop to d3, sacrificing 2 pawns. Not exactly, because we don't want to hang our bishops. Actually, what? This work? It does. Then what is the move here? Oh, they just play knight f3 first. Queen g4, and argue that black isn't doing too well. Okay. Well, I didn't know this line. Instead, my opponent decides to play the most natural and logical move. If you don't know the theory in that position, that's a little bit hard to play. My opponent instead plays the move b3. I go with e6, which made a lot of sense to me. Simply going with a normal Caro-Kann play, and because it's kind of looking like a normal Caro-Kann at this point, just our pawns are on h5 and h4. And what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to play like knight d7 and c5, or maybe I'll play c5 immediately and knight c6. It's a tough choice. My knight's going to try and come out to f5 at some point after the light squared bishop gets traded. My rook's going to come to c8, and I'm going to have play on the d4 pawn. And in reality, this is kind of a dream position for a Caro-Kann player, because the dark squared bishop for white is doing actually nothing on that side of the board, and black has gotten the moves that they wanted to get. My opponent goes knight f3, and I think for a little bit, thinking about knight d7, thinking about c5, thinking about even I think I would even like knight e7 and trying to like get something going. I'm thinking about bishop g4 here. There's a lot of moves to play, but then I had this like really nice like epiphany, and it was I told myself, wait, the whole point of black's position is to play c5. That's the entire point of black's position. And so why is it not the best move? And then I'm like, okay, I play c5. And it is the best move. It's the best move by a minus 0.5, which is pretty good. And I'm very glad that I managed to play this move. And black is doing really, really well here. My opponent goes with the move c3, but this already gives black just a ton of play. I quickly go knight c6 because I thought it was the best move. Yes, I can take, but I thought this kind of took away like the whole point of black's position. Like now, white doesn't need to take back with the pawn, instead can take back with a knight, and life isn't actually that good. So I play knight c6, threatening, by the way, if my opponent's gonna do anything, then I'm gonna take the pawn. Like this is now good for black, because at the end of the line, with queen d4, I'm going to be able to get the bishop out to c5, and if you take back with the pawn, I can probably just play rook c8 or something normal, and black is just doing very, very well. Instead of that, my opponent plays a logical move. He goes bishop to e3, but what this does is it's a concession. It's a concession. He's conceding to me that he thinks that his position is worse with this move, because what has he done? He put the bishop out here on like move 5, and now he brings it back. Like, okay, now he's conceding that his position is worse, and black has a ton of play. Just a ton of play. And I'm thinking here, and I'm thinking here, and I'm thinking here about the best way to get going, and I make a big mistake. I should have played knight h6. I should have played knight h6. Honestly, it was one of the first moves that came to mind. But the reason why I didn't play it is because I thought that the knight wanted to be on f5, and I just didn't really see a way for my knight to get to f5. If I played bishop to g4, I was just like thinking about it, and I was like, do I really want to like give up the bishop pair? Because like that's the whole point about bishop to g4. Also, if I play knight h6 immediately, maybe there's bishop takes h6. I don't really know about this. I played this in another game in this line because I've played so many games this line. Actually, I've only played 3. Is it 3? Yes, I've only played 3 games in this line in classical games, and once I played knight h6, and the best move was bishop takes h6, and I was like, maybe it's the best move again. But here, I really just should have realized that completely destabilizes the center. Like, that's not a good move. So I really should have played knight h6. But instead I just played a normal move, natural move. I played the rook c8, which made a lot of sense to me. It keeps some advantage, but it's not that good. It kind of gives white just another move, and I shouldn't have rushed with this move. The idea is basically, okay, I'm going to open up the c file, and then okay, my rook is going to be active. But it's kind of a little bit lazy. It's just an improving move, but it's not exactly what I wanted. Not the best, but we can make do because of my opponent's next move. My opponent goes d takes c5. That's not a good move. That's not a good move. I go bishop takes c5. My opponent takes back with the bishop. I take back with the queen. Now, as you can see, black has a very, very powerful position. Black has this very, very weak pawn on the e5 square. Black has the nice c file. Black has the fact that this knight has a hard time developing since it can't develop here. Since this pawn is hanging, it can't develop here since that, of course, that would be a free knight. And actually, black is just threatening this move, for example. There's a ton of stuff in this position that's really, really good for me. And so it forces my opponent to play the move b4, which makes a lot of sense to me. But it didn't make a lot of sense to me in the game. And the reason why it didn't make a lot of sense to me is because I calculated this line for a long time. Of course, if I wanted to play normal moves, queen b6, and black is doing great. But for some reason, I just wasn't really too sure about it. I thought, okay, he plays b5. I put my knight on the edge of the board. Okay, my knight might be coming here. But I just wasn't convinced. I really just wasn't convinced by this. I didn't like that his pawn was kind of like cramping up my queen. I didn't like that my king wasn't castled. I just wasn't convinced that my position was actually that much better here. And so I calculated a different line. I calculated the move knight takes b4. This is what I calculated during the game. Knight takes b4. And what I ended up realizing is that knight takes b4, I thought worked. I thought that this move worked. And if it did work, it would be a very, very good blunder. brilliant move, probably one of my best moves I've ever played if I was able to actually get it to work. But it doesn't work. I calculated here, knight takes b4, c takes b4, queen takes b4. My opponent has to play knight bd2. He has to play knight bd2. He doesn't have any other move. If he goes knight back here, I thought that, okay, this is just dumb. I thought that I had a better move than what I consider. I thought about like just queen d4. This doesn't work. Like I thought at the very least I had queen d4 or maybe queen b2 or something. It doesn't work. But it's a little, I don't know. It's kind of tricky. It's kind of tricky. I thought queen d4, I just didn't spend much time with this because I thought this was bad. Like, why are you leaving the rook in the dust? This pawn is now without a defender. I couldn't believe that this move was okay. So I just thought that move was wrong. The reason why it's wrong, the reason why knight f2 is actually wrong is because actually black can just do anything. Like, it doesn't matter to black that white doesn't white doesn't matter to black that to like do anything immediately, I guess. Like I don't have to be fast here. I can just play knight h6 or something. And like the knight's coming here, gonna pick up the pawn. Maybe knight's gonna come into the position because my opponent can't defend the pawn. Like it's a little, it makes sense, but it's hard to play when you think that you only have like a limited amount of time to do stuff before he's able to just absolutely destroy you. The other move that I looked at was queen d2, and I was sure that this move was wrong. Because I simply played the move rook c1, king e2, and I was just going to play rook c2 and call it a day, but there's actually a nice little mate here after queen c4 here and queen e4 mate. I didn't see that, but I probably found it during the game if that happened. Instead, the only move that I thought was any importance was to play the move knight b to d2. And I'm right. But here I calculated something that was not correct. Here, I calculated bishop to c2. You can't play queen c1 because you're just going into the rook. I'm going to play knight e7, and there's going to be some terrible discovered attack, so that's not going to happen. Bishop c2, so you're going to have to play queen here, queen to e2. You're threatening this check with a fork of the queen, and if you're able to trade the queens, then that would be bad, so I can't allow that. There's two moves here. I could have played the move a6, or I was thinking about the move rook c5 as well. I thought they both managed to stop it, but I thought a6 was better because in some lines I thought the knight was coming to b3 to defend this rook here, and I thought that the knight coming to b3 and also attacking my rook could be a problem, so I was going to play a6, right? And after a6, my opponent really should be playing the move rook to c1, because if he doesn't, then I'm going to be able to come to this square and attack the rook immediately with a big attack, or maybe I can come to this square and attack the rook immediately. There's a lot of big issues, but after rook to c1, I'm going to play queen here. My opponent is going to play the move. Oh, wait, no, I wasn't going to play queen there. I was going to play knight e7 first. Knight e7 first. He doesn't have a move. White simply doesn't have a move. White's going to play something like this, and then I'm going to play queen to b2. My opponent can't play knight to b3. Because I'm simply going to take the pawn on a2. The knight is hanging. There's no way to defend it. And I thought that I was winning. I thought that I was at least going to win the exchange. That's what I thought. That I was at least going to win the exchange. Then later on, I saw that he had some very interesting moves, such as the move a3 at some point, attacking my queen. I was trying to figure out if that was good or not. But at the end of the day, I just played knight takes b4, and after this line knight b2, I played bishop c2. And my opponent has two moves here that, well, he has a couple moves here, but two moves here that win for white. One move here that draws. My opponent has the move a3, which is really, really powerful. And I didn't see this from afar. I saw this when I was getting into the position. But basically, I thought if I played queen b2, now he plays queen c1, and life is bad, and I can't really do anything. If I play queen to c3 here, I thought he probably even has like a move like queen c1 at this point, since my queen is under fire. And I didn't like this either. And I couldn't find out what to do after a3, but luckily for me, he didn't play it. The other move that wins for white, and it's a move that I didn't even believe won for white when I saw this, was the move queen to c1. And I could not believe this. Queen to c1 looks like you're walking right into the file of the rook. I simply play knight e7, and it looks like I have like a ton of play. Like my bishop's gonna move out somewhere. Probably he's gonna get checkmated or something. And I just thought, no way that he can survive this. There is no way. But I guess there is a way. He is able to win. He's able to win the game. The only move here, by the way, being a3. That's nice. I didn't see that. Instead, my opponent didn't play any of those moves and played the move queen to e2, which is the line that I had calculated. But the fact is that I messed up again. I was right in one thing. I was right that rook c5 is the wrong move because of silly stuff coming over here. Actually, my opponent can play queen e3 and just stop me from going queen b2, which would be nice, but neither of us saw that. I thought this was wrong. I thought rook c5 was wrong. I'm glad I was right, but I wasn't right in the correct way. The move that I played, however, was also wrong. a6 is not the right move. But at least this isn't losing anymore. The right move here is to actually just play the move rook c4. And white is nothing because I'm simply threatening this move. The knight is pinned. You cannot take it. This is game over. My opponent plays here. I'm okay. I simply go rook e4. And actually not rook e4. So like queen b2 first, and then okay, you know what, whatever. Yeah, great. Yeah, but I didn't see that line. I instead play the move a6. My opponent has a draw here somehow. I don't even understand the draw. My opponent has the move rook c1, which I thought was the best move, but I didn't really know what to play. I didn't really know what he was gonna do after knight e7. I saw one move, which was queen e3. This is the main line, by the way. Queen e3, I would play like queen here, queen b2 or something, and I didn't see any way for him to win. I mean, for him to survive. Like, I don't know. I don't see anything for him to survive. Actually, here he has knight b3. Okay, that's nice. And that's the point of queen e3. Okay, great. Awesome. I love it. Yeah, that didn't happen. And instead of rook c1, my opponent played the move queen e3 immediately. But now I realized his idea. He wanted to go with queen here after I queen b2 to defend his rook. But I'm sure that he missed this. I played queen b2. My opponent played queen d4, and I simply played the move rook to c3. And I'm sure he missed rook to c3. Because it's just not a move that you think about. Rook to c3, and white is losing. White is losing, except for one move that's really, really stupid, and no one's ever gonna play it, so we're not even gonna look at it. Okay, we'll look at it. We'll look at it a little bit because I'm kind of interested. It's bishop b5 check. I have no idea why this move is so good. A b5, and oh, he just sacrifices the bishop and castles, and he just says, okay, he's okay. Yeah, sure, man, sure, you're okay here. Definitely, you're okay. Yeah, I'm up a piece, but yeah, he's definitely okay. No human plays bishop b5 check. Instead, my opponent thought for like 10 minutes and played the move rook d1, simply losing the rook because he's human and he knows how to lose games. I take on d1. My opponent takes back with the king, of course. And I realized that I can do a couple things. If I want, I can trade the queens, but I didn't want to like rush with this. Like, okay, here I win a pawn, but I didn't want to rush with this. I thought that this was like a little bit not okay. So I decided instead, like, you know what, the queens are fine on the board. I can simply play the move knight e7 and just argue that he has nothing, which I'm actually very happy about this move because a lot of the times I rush, and that's something that I'm working on, something that I'm not supposed to do. So I'm glad that I was able to make that happen. My opponent goes queen a4 check, but I calculated properly. I simply play the move knight c6. You can't play this move because of rook c1 check here, and I simply pick up the knight. The queen is defended by my knight, and life is good. Instead, after knight c6, my opponent brought the king to e2, which is a good move. One other thing that I really liked about my position here is that he can't develop the bishop at all. Like, one interesting move, he might want to like sack on a6, for example, but then I simply have to move rook c1 check. Whenever he moves the bishop, I'm gonna have rook c1 check, pick up this rook, and this sacrifice is nothing. Like here, here, queen b7. There's nothing here. You can go here. I can just castle. There's nothing here. I'm up 7 points of material. Instead of that, my opponent goes king e2, and I kind of get infatuated with the wrong plan. Really, what I should have done is I should have just castled and let him think even more. Yeah, I got a little bit too excited here. I really thought that king e2 was kind of a mistake because I saw this really nice move. I saw this move rook to c4, but it's just not a good move. It's just not a good move. My opponent has queen b3, and he's able to get out of trouble. If I just castled here, the game would have been over very, very quickly. I would have probably just been able to checkmate him. But rook c4 is a big mistake. He has queen b3, and I think here for a little bit, I don't really have anything, though. I just don't have anything. So I give him this check. He comes back. I give him this check on a1, so then his knight has to go back to the back rank. But this isn't correct. But this isn't like that good for me. Like, for example, I can't take this pawn. At least I thought that I couldn't take this pawn, because like at the end of the day, my opponent is gonna have like some play with like bishop d3, and as you can see, my rook is not coming back in. Like, this is not good. I have to play d4, and I don't know. Now this pawn becomes a weakness. It's obviously still winning for black, but it's a lot less clean than I wanted it to be. Instead, I here play the move king to e7 because it's an endgame. I gotta bring my king. Normal endgame principles say that in the endgames you gotta bring the kings. So I bring my king. My opponent goes bishop to d3, which is a good move. And I simply scoot over my rook to a4, and I calculate this brief line. My opponent has to play the move a3 here, and then I would figure out something what to do. But I calculated what would happen after knight c3, which is what happened in the game. And I realized that here I'm actually winning even more because of rook a3. My opponent's going to go king c2, and then I'm simply going to have the move d4. And I am going to be picking up the pawn at the very least. But even more than that, after the move knight e4, I simply have the move knight to b4 check, and I'm picking up the bishop as well. King at b2, rook takes d3. Now I am up an exchange and 2 pawns. Originally I was just up 2 pawns for 2 pieces, but now I'm even like concretely winning, which is very, very good. My opponent goes rook c1, which is a good try. If I wanted to just make sure everything was correct, I could play rook c3 and get into a position where I'm simply up a pawn. Well, sorry, he wouldn't trade the rook. He would trade the knight. And I would get into a position where I'm simply up a pawn, but this is a little bit tricky. Here, after knight c3... I have knight d3. I didn't even realize. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe rook c3 was the best move. But instead I play knight c6, which is another good move. Just getting in the way of the rook. And in this endgame, I'm simply going to win the game. My opponent goes knight c5, rook c3. We're going to speed fast here for a little bit because now I'm just up a rook. Up an exchange of 2 pawns. King b3, and I'm able to trade everything. I get to b4, I pick up the knight, and we're almost at the part that you want to see. I go knight d3, my opponent goes with the move f3. I go rook f5, I don't really know why. I'm just trying to like make sure that this pawn can't go forward. I'm trying to make sure that this move is not really a thing that can happen. My opponent goes knight e4, and I'm able to trade off the pieces. And I have a lot of pawns here. So if my opponent's not going to resign, there's one little thing that I would like to do. And let me show you. Opponent goes g4, I take it. Opponent decides to leave the pawn, so I bring my king. And there are 4 passed pawns over here that are just going to come down the board. And what do you make when you get a pawn to the end of the board? I'll tell you what I make. I make bishops. I think they're pretty good pieces. You know, I think that the more bishops you have, the higher chances of you winning the game. So I make a couple more. You know, I don't think I had enough originally. Like 2 bishops are good, 2 dark sword bishops are good. But you know what I kind of need? I kind of feel like I need like a bishop here. So you know what I made? I decided to push this pawn, and I made another. I was just thinking that, you know, I kind of need some bishops. Like I just don't have enough bishops right now. So I need a couple more bishops. So I made another bishop, and after my opponent moves his king around a bit more, I think about it, and I think about what I want to make like into a piece. I'm thinking about, do I want like a queen here? Maybe I have like a knight. Nah. I think I need another bit. I mean, okay. I need a couple more bishops, right? Like this is pretty good. I think that's enough bishops now. And here I have like 1 minute, so I just mate him because I didn't know how to like get my pawn out, and I didn't want to like stalemate him, so I just checkmate him. This is a pretty funny ending. You know, I think that White probably should have resigned like here. Like this is a pretty average place to resign on move 32. Maybe you don't play the game for 46 more moves. You know, maybe that's not what you want to do. Maybe you should resign a little bit earlier, especially if you think that your opponent can mate you with like a rook, being like a rook up. You know, I think this was a good game. I think it really demonstrated my skill of making bishops. So I'm gonna put it into one of my favorite games ever. And yeah, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys found this entertaining. A little bit of a silly ending to this one, but you know, yeah. If you did enjoy the video, remember to like, subscribe, don't know the things YouTubers tell you to do, and yeah, that's it. Good evening and good night.